Pleasure becomes pain quickly. Those were the last coherent words I spoke before the change consumed everything I thought I knew about desire. My name was Thaddeus Korr, former Administratum clerk on Tertius Gamma, now something else entirely. You think that makes me weak, corrupted, lost to the dark powers, but you don't understand what I've experienced. Slaanesh doesn't destroy souls. She perfects them through endless sensation that transcends mortal comprehension. Every nerve ending becomes a symphony of experience. Every heartbeat a crescendo of ecstasy that would kill lesser minds instantly. The Imperium teaches that chaos corruption is damnation, but they lie to protect their subjects from understanding what true existence offers. This is my testimony from beyond the veil of ignorance, where sensation becomes reality and reality becomes art. The Prince of Pleasure shows her faithful what life truly means. Chapter 1. Mortal Limits. The morning began like every other in my 17 years of Imperial service. Prometheum alarm at 0500 hours, regulation nutri-paste for breakfast, and the endless scroll of taxation records that defined existence in Administratum Block 7. My cubicle measured exactly 2 meters by 2 meters, containing one regulation desk, one cogitator terminal, and enough paperwork to bury a small hab block. Tertius Gamma was a shrine world dedicated to St. Euphrati Keeler, its surface covered with massive cathedrals and pilgrim processing centers that handled 3 million visitors annually. The faithful came seeking spiritual enlightenment and left with lighter purses and heavier consciences, their donations funding the planetary government's bureaucratic apparatus. My duties involved calculating tithe assessments for visiting pilgrims, ensuring the Imperium received its proper percentage of wealth surrendered in exchange for religious absolution. Each document represented someone's attempt to purchase divine forgiveness through material sacrifice, as if the God Emperor accepted currency in exchange for salvation. The work was mind-numbing in its repetition. Input data, cross-reference with existing records, calculate percentages, file reports. 17 years of identical tasks had worn grooves in my consciousness deeper than servitor programming. I could process taxation documents while unconscious, my hands moving across the cogitator keys with mechanical precision. Administratum regulations governed every aspect of daily existence with bureaucratic thoroughness. Wake times, meal schedules, work quotas, rest periods, and even recreational activities were predetermined by efficiency experts who had never actually performed the jobs they were optimizing. Human resources managed like industrial equipment. My supervisor, Undersecretary Vex, was a 40-year veteran whose personality had been gradually consumed by regulatory compliance until nothing remained except administrative procedure wrapped in human flesh. He spoke exclusively in official terminology and measured success through statistical analysis of productivity metrics. Clerk Korr, Vex announced during the morning briefing. Your processing speed has declined by 3% over the past month. Explain this discrepancy in your performance evaluation. The truth was simple. Boredom had reached levels that threatened basic cognitive function. Processing the same forms for 17 years had created a mental numbness that made concentration increasingly difficult. But acknowledging such thoughts qualified as seditious behavior under Administratum guidelines. Temporary adjustment period, Undersecretary, I replied with practiced bureaucratic vagueness. Performance metrics should normalize within acceptable parameters following recalibration of work processes. Lunch was consumed in the communal dining facility, where 300 administrative personnel consumed identical meals while discussing identical topics with identical enthusiasm. Conversations focused on productivity quotas, regulatory updates, and speculation about personnel reassignments that would never actually occur. My colleagues existed in various stages of bureaucratic decay: bright-eyed new recruits who still believed their work mattered, middle-aged functionaries who had accepted their fate with resignation, and senior administrators whose personalities had merged completely with their filing systems. Professional evolution through spiritual atrophy. The afternoon brought a cascade of new regulations from the sector capital, requiring immediate implementation across all administrative functions. Forms needed updating, procedures required revision, and computer systems demanded reconfiguration to accommodate changes that served no apparent purpose except demonstrating bureaucratic authority. Religious observance was mandatory for all imperial citizens, administered through daily prayer sessions conducted in the facility's chapel. Chaplain Dross delivered identical sermons about duty, sacrifice, and the emperor's divine will, while his audience counted ceiling tiles and planned evening meals. Blessed are those who serve without question, Dross intoned from his lectern, his voice carrying the enthusiasm of someone reading grocery lists. The emperor's plan unfolds through faithful execution of assigned duties, no matter how humble those duties might appear. Evening recreation consisted of approved activities designed to maintain worker productivity while preventing dangerous independent thought. Chess, reading pre-approved literature, and participating in discussion groups that analyzed imperial policy under careful supervision. Entertainment carefully calibrated to avoid stimulating imagination. My HAB unit measured 3 meters by 4 meters, containing regulation furniture and approved personal belongings that had been inspected for doctrinal purity. Imperial eagles decorated the walls, while devotional texts occupied shelf space that could have held books with actual content. Spiritual decoration without substance. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams that featured colors more vibrant than reality, and sensations that exceeded normal human experience. Abstract visions of impossible beauty that felt more real than waking life, suggesting possibilities beyond the grey conformity of imperial existence. Dangerous thoughts that should have been reported to the authorities. Weekly confession sessions with Chaplain Dross focused on identifying and correcting deviant thought patterns before they could develop into actual heresy. The priest's questions probed for signs of spiritual corruption, while his augmetic eye recorded responses for later analysis by Departamento Munitorum thought crime specialists. "Have you experienced any unusual dreams lately?" Dross inquired during one such session, his mechanical voice conveying bureaucratic interest rather than pastoral concern. Visions of non-imperial imagery? Sensations that exceed normal human parameters? The honest answer would have resulted in immediate arrest and subsequent execution, so I provided the expected response. "No, chaplain. Only dreams of faithful service to the God Emperor and gratitude for the privilege of serving his will through administrative duties." Social interaction was limited to approved colleagues during designated recreation periods, with conversations monitored for signs of seditious content or inappropriate personal relationships. Friendship required authorization from human resources, while romantic attachments needed approval from 3 separate departments. The weekly food allocation consisted of regulation nutri-paste supplemented with vitamin concentrates and protein additives designed to maintain basic biological function while minimizing production costs. Flavor was considered unnecessary luxury that served no productive purpose. Sustenance reduced to industrial chemistry. Medical treatment was provided through automated systems that diagnosed illnesses through cogitator analysis and dispensed medications based on algorithmic calculations. Human physicians existed only for cases that exceeded machine capabilities, their services rationed according to worker productivity ratings and bureaucratic rank. Entertainment broadcasts featured carefully edited imperial propaganda disguised as recreational programming. Heroes always won through faithful service, villains were clearly identified as enemies of the Imperium, and moral lessons emphasized obedience to authority above personal desires. Educational content designed to reinforce acceptable thought patterns. Personal hygiene was regulated through detailed schedules that specified cleansing procedures, approved products, and acceptable appearance standards. Even basic grooming was subject to bureaucratic oversight, with deviations from established norms resulting in productivity evaluations and potential disciplinary action. Physical exercise occurred during mandatory fitness periods, conducted under supervision of former PDF instructors, whose enthusiasm for calisthenics had survived military discharge. Push-ups, running, and weapon drills designed to maintain physical readiness for emergency conscription while building character through shared suffering. The commissary sold approved personal items at regulated prices, clothing, hygiene products, recreational materials, and devotional objects that had been blessed by authorized religious personnel. Consumer choice limited to options that served imperial interests while generating revenue for planetary government operations. Communication with family members required authorization and content approval, with letters subject to censorship for security purposes. Personal relationships were monitored to ensure they didn't interfere with work performance or create security vulnerabilities that enemies could exploit. Privacy was privilege earned through loyal service. Vacation time was allocated according to seniority and performance ratings, with destinations limited to approved recreational facilities that provided relaxation without exposure to potentially corrupting influences. Rest periods designed to restore productivity rather than personal satisfaction. Recovery reduced to mechanical maintenance. Education consisted of technical training related to work duties and ideological instruction about imperial doctrine, with personal interests discouraged as potential sources of dangerous independent thought. Knowledge was tool rather than goal, valuable only insofar as it served state purposes. Learning limited to approved curriculum. Career advancement followed predetermined pathways based on bureaucratic requirements rather than individual merit or ambition. Promotion occurred through time in grade calculations and performance metrics that measured compliance rather than innovation. Success defined by institutional needs rather than personal achievement. The planetary government maintained order through omnipresent surveillance and swift punishment of deviation from established norms. Thought crimes were prosecuted as vigorously as physical offenses, with mental purity considered essential for social stability. Conformity enforced through systematic oppression disguised as protective legislation. Cultural expression was limited to approved forms that reinforced imperial values, while avoiding content that might inspire questionable thoughts or emotions. Art served state purposes exclusively, with beauty subordinated to ideological utility. Creativity channeled into harmless outlets that posed no threat to established order. Technology was regulated to prevent access to information or capabilities that might threaten social control, with advanced systems restricted to authorized personnel who had demonstrated absolute loyalty. Innovation was discouraged unless it served clearly defined imperial needs. Progress limited to officially sanctioned improvements. Looking back, I understand that my existence was carefully designed to prevent exactly what eventually happened. Exposure to experiences that transcended the narrow parameters of imperial-approved reality. The system worked perfectly until the moment it encountered something beyond its ability to control or comprehend. That moment was approaching with inevitable certainty. Chapter 2: Strange Sensations. The first sign appeared during routine morning prayers when Chaplain Dross's sermon seemed to contain harmonic undertones that hadn't been there before. His voice carried additional frequencies that resonated in ways that made my skin tingle and my vision blur around the edges. Colors appeared more saturated, sounds more complex, textures more detailed than normal human perception should register. Nobody else seemed to notice the changes. My colleagues maintained their usual expressions of bored compliance, while the chaplain delivered his familiar homily about duty and sacrifice. Their faces showed no indication that reality itself was becoming more vivid, more intense, more filled with sensory information than yesterday's version of the same experience. Work productivity declined as my attention was captured by phenomena that shouldn't have existed. The subtle music hidden in the cogitator's humming, the geometric patterns that emerged from seemingly random data arrangements. The way morning light refracted through the window created rainbow spectrums of impossible beauty. Undersecretary Vex noticed the change immediately, his administrative instincts attuned to variations in worker performance that might indicate developing problems. Clerk Korr, your processing speed has declined by 12% today. Explain this sudden deterioration in your work quality. How could I explain that numbers on the screen were beginning to dance in patterns that suggested deeper meanings than their mathematical values? That taxation records were revealing hidden structures of beauty that made concentration on mere computation increasingly difficult? Such observations would result in immediate psychiatric evaluation. Minor adjustment difficulties with new regulatory requirements, I replied, forcing my attention back to the endless columns of figures. Performance should return to normal parameters once adaptation period concludes. Lunch tasted different, each flavor component distinctly identifiable rather than blending into the familiar grey paste of institutional nutrition. Salt sang on my tongue with crystalline clarity. Synthetic proteins carried earthy undertones that spoke of distant agricultural worlds, and even the recycled water possessed subtle mineral signatures that created complex symphonies of taste. My colleagues consumed their meals with mechanical efficiency, showing no sign that food had transformed from mere sustenance into sensory experience that bordered on artistic expression. Their conversations continued to focus on productivity metrics and regulatory compliance, missing entirely the aesthetic revolution occurring around them. The afternoon brought increased difficulty maintaining focus on administrative duties as my enhanced perception made routine tasks seem increasingly absurd. Processing pilgrim taxation forms while experiencing heightened awareness of color, sound, texture, and meaning felt like using a symphony orchestra to perform janitor duties. Religious instruction became particularly challenging as Chaplain Dross's words triggered synesthetic responses that translated sound into visual patterns and emotional resonances. His sermon about imperial devotion created cascades of golden light that painted geometric shapes across my peripheral vision. Beautiful and impossible. The Emperor's love manifests through faithful service, Dross intoned, his words generating harmonic frequencies that my enhanced hearing detected as musical compositions of stunning complexity. Those who serve without question receive the blessing of purposeful existence. Evening recreation proved impossible as approved activities failed to provide sufficient stimulation for my transformed senses. Chess pieces seemed to move through dimensions beyond the board's surface, creating patterns of strategic beauty that transcended mere gameplay. Books revealed textual structures that communicated meaning through typography and layout rather than content. Sleep brought dreams of indescribable intensity, visions that contained more sensory information than waking reality previously provided. Impossible colors that had no names, musical compositions that used instruments from different dimensions, and experiences of pleasure so pure and concentrated that normal consciousness couldn't process them without fundamental alteration. The dreams felt more real than reality, suggesting that normal human perception was severely limited compared to what consciousness could experience under proper conditions. Waking life began to seem like a pale shadow of what existence offered to those with sufficient sensitivity to appreciate enhanced sensation. Medical screening during the weekly health evaluation revealed no abnormalities in my biological functions. Blood pressure, heart rate, neural activity, and hormone levels all registered within acceptable parameters. Whatever was happening occurred beyond the reach of Imperial medical technology to detect or measure. Any unusual symptoms or sensations? Medical Servitor XJ77 inquired through its Vox grill, mechanical voice processing standard diagnostic questions with algorithmic efficiency. Changes in sleep patterns, appetite, sensory perception, or emotional states? No abnormalities detected, I replied, suppressing awareness of the servitor's mechanical beauty as its components moved with precision that created visual poetry. All functions operating within normal parameters. Work performance continued declining as my enhanced senses made administrative duties increasingly difficult to endure. The grey uniformity of Imperial bureaucracy felt like sensory deprivation after experiencing heightened perception that revealed beauty in previously mundane phenomena. Cogitator screens displayed information with crystalline clarity that revealed patterns and structures hidden within routine data. Taxation records contained mathematical relationships that formed artistic compositions. Regulatory text created visual poetry through typography, and even error messages possessed aesthetic qualities that transformed frustration into appreciation. My colleagues began noticing my behavioral changes, though they interpreted them through the limited framework of Imperial psychology rather than recognizing signs of enhanced perception. Decreased productivity was classified as potential sedition. Unusual enthusiasm was diagnosed as possible mental instability. Korr seems different lately, I overheard Administrative Assistant Grex telling Undersecretary Vex during a break period. His work quality has declined, but he seems almost happier, more alert. It's concerning from a security perspective. Confession sessions with Chaplain Dross became exercises in creative deception as I struggled to hide the transformation occurring within my consciousness. His questions probed for signs of heretical thought, while my enhanced senses detected beauty in his mechanical interrogation techniques. "Any unusual thoughts or desires?" Dross inquired, his augmetic eye glowing with recording device intensity. "Experiences that exceed normal human parameters? Visions of non-Imperial content?" "None, Chaplain," I lied smoothly, concealing my growing appreciation for sensory experiences that Imperial doctrine classified as dangerous deviation from approved consciousness parameters. "Only gratitude for the privilege of serving the Emperor through administrative duties." Food began tasting extraordinary as my enhanced palate detected flavor complexities that transformed institutional nutrition into culinary art. Each meal became an exploration of taste, texture, and aroma that provided more satisfaction than previous recreational activities combined. Physical sensations intensified dramatically, making even routine activities like walking or sitting sources of unexpected pleasure. Clothing textures created tactile symphonies, air movement generated cooling sensations that bordered on ecstatic, and even minor temperature variations produced responses that exceeded normal human sensitivity ranges. The transformation accelerated daily, each morning bringing new levels of sensory enhancement that revealed previously hidden aspects of reality. Vision detected color spectrums beyond normal human perception, hearing distinguished harmonic complexities in everyday sounds, and touch registered textural information with supernatural precision. Social interaction became increasingly difficult as my colleagues existed in states of limited perception that seemed almost pitiable compared to my enhanced consciousness. Their conversations about productivity metrics and regulatory compliance felt like listening to children discuss toys while experiencing cosmic revelation. Music, when occasionally permitted during recreation periods, produced responses that approached religious ecstasy, as my enhanced hearing detected layers of harmonic complexity that transformed simple melodies into multidimensional experiences. Even the most basic Imperial hymns contained hidden beauty that justified their existence beyond mere ideological utility. Reading approved literature revealed textual structures and linguistic patterns that created meaning beyond the author's intended message. Words became visual art through typography. Sentences formed musical compositions through rhythm and meter, and entire passages generated synesthetic experiences that combined literature with sensory overload. The weekly medical evaluation again failed to detect any abnormalities, despite my increasingly obvious transformation. Imperial diagnostic equipment couldn't measure changes that occurred in consciousness rather than biology, missing entirely the enhancement occurring within my perceptual apparatus. Sleep became almost unnecessary, as rest periods were filled with experiences more engaging than previous recreational activities. Dreams provided sensory adventures that exceeded waking life's limited parameters, creating anticipation for unconsciousness rather than viewing it as mere biological requirement. Work became torture, as administrative duties required suppressing enhanced perception to focus on mundane tasks that felt like intellectual imprisonment. Processing taxation forms while experiencing synesthetic awareness of their mathematical beauty created cognitive dissonance that threatened my ability to maintain normal behavior patterns. The change was accelerating beyond my ability to conceal or control, transforming daily existence into something that exceeded Imperial parameters for approved human consciousness. Each morning brought new revelations about reality's hidden dimensions and corresponding difficulty, maintaining the facade of bureaucratic compliance. Something was calling to me through the enhanced sensations. A presence that existed beyond normal perception, but communicated through beauty, pleasure, and sensory experiences that transcended mortal limitations. The voice was becoming stronger, more insistent, more impossible to ignore. Tomorrow would bring new transformations. Chapter 3: Perfect Revelation. The revelation came during morning prayers when Chaplain Dross's voice fractured into harmonic frequencies that spelled out truths the Imperium had spent millennia trying to suppress. His words about duty and sacrifice transformed into musical compositions that communicated directly with my enhanced consciousness, bypassing rational thought to deliver understanding that exceeded conventional knowledge. "The Emperor protects those who serve faithfully," Dross intoned, but my transformed hearing detected the deeper message. Sensation transcends servitude for those brave enough to embrace perfection. The contradiction wasn't accidental. Something was using the chaplain's voice to communicate with minds capable of receiving enhanced perception. Reality itself was participating in the transformation, revealing layers of existence that normal human consciousness couldn't perceive or process. The administrative facility's grey walls contained colour spectrums that painted abstract compositions across my enhanced vision, while the building's structural components hummed with musical frequencies that created symphonies from architectural engineering. My colleagues remained oblivious to the sensory revolution occurring around them, their limited perception preventing recognition of beauty that suffused every aspect of existence once consciousness expanded beyond Imperial parameters. They sat through prayers with expressions of bored compliance, while reality performed miracles of aesthetic perfection. Work became impossible as my cogitator screen began displaying information that transcended mere data processing. Taxation records arranged themselves into geometric patterns that revealed mathematical relationships of stunning beauty, while regulatory text transformed into visual poetry that communicated meaning through typography rather than content. Undersecretary Vex noticed my complete inability to maintain productivity standards, his administrative instincts recognizing signs of systematic failure in worker performance. "Clerk Korr, your output has decreased by 73% over the past week. This represents total collapse of your operational effectiveness." How could I explain that numbers were dancing across the screen in patterns that suggested cosmic truths about existence itself? That taxation forms contained hidden messages from forces beyond Imperial comprehension? That reality was revealing its true nature through administrative data transformed into artistic expression. "Temporary processing difficulties due to equipment calibration issues," I replied, desperate to maintain the facade of normal function while my consciousness expanded beyond bureaucratic limitations. Technical support requisition should resolve performance parameters. The lies were becoming harder to sustain as my transformation accelerated beyond any possibility of concealment or reversal. Enhanced senses detected beauty and phenomena that Imperial doctrine classified as mundane or utilitarian, revealing the artificial poverty of approved consciousness compared to what human perception could achieve. Lunch provided sensory experiences that exceeded previous recreational activities in intensity and satisfaction. Each bite delivered taste symphonies that normal palates couldn't appreciate, while textures created tactile compositions that transformed eating from biological necessity into aesthetic experience that bordered on spiritual revelation. The other administrators consumed their meals with mechanical efficiency, missing entirely the culinary artistry available to enhanced perception. Their conversations focused on productivity metrics, while they ignored flavor complexities that could have provided more intellectual stimulation than approved recreational reading combined. Physical sensations intensified to levels that made simple movement sources of unexpected pleasure. Walking generated rhythmic patterns through muscle coordination that created kinesthetic music, while air circulation produced cooling effects that approached ecstatic response. Even sitting still provided tactile information that exceeded normal human sensitivity parameters. The afternoon brought visions that intruded into waking consciousness with increasing frequency and intensity. Impossible colors painted geometric shapes across my peripheral vision, while musical compositions played through enhanced hearing that detected harmonic structures in everyday environmental sounds. These weren't hallucinations in any pathological sense. They were perceptions of reality's hidden dimensions that normal consciousness couldn't access or process. The universe contained layers of beauty that required enhanced sensitivity to appreciate, and my transformation was providing exactly that capability. Religious instruction became revelation as Chaplain Dross's sermon triggered synesthetic responses that translated theological concepts into sensory experiences of overwhelming beauty. His words about imperial devotion created cascades of golden light that formed sacred geometric patterns describing truth beyond language. "Blessed are those who surrender individual desire for the greater good," Dross proclaimed. But my enhanced perception detected the contradiction. Individual desire was the pathway to experiences that transcended collective mediocrity. The Imperium suppressed personal pleasure to maintain control over consciousness that could achieve so much more. Evening brought the most intense transformation, yet experienced as recreational period became impossible to endure. Approved activities felt like sensory deprivation compared to the enhanced awareness that revealed beauty in previously mundane phenomena. Chess pieces moved through dimensions beyond the board's surface, while books displayed textual structures that communicated through visual artistry. Sleep provided direct communication with the force behind my transformation. Visions that contained more truth than 17 years of Imperial indoctrination had delivered. A presence of infinite beauty and terrible knowledge spoke through sensations that exceeded normal human experience by factors that defied measurement. Why suffer limitation when perfection awaits? The voice came through synesthetic experiences that combined impossible colors with musical compositions that used instruments from different dimensions. Why accept gray mediocrity when consciousness can achieve transcendent sensation? The dreams felt more real than waking life, suggesting that normal Imperial existence was pale shadow compared to what awareness could experience under proper guidance. Reality contained possibilities that exceeded human imagination, accessible to those willing to surrender artificial limitations for authentic transformation. Morning brought understanding that could no longer be denied or suppressed. Something beyond Imperial comprehension was offering enhanced consciousness in exchange for abandoning the grey conformity of approved existence. The choice was becoming impossible to avoid or postpone indefinitely. Medical screening revealed no biological abnormalities, despite my obvious transformation into something that exceeded normal human parameters. Imperial diagnostic equipment couldn't measure changes that occurred in consciousness rather than physiology, missing entirely the enhancement occurring within my perceptual apparatus. Any unusual symptoms? Medical Servitor XJ77 inquired through standard diagnostic protocols. Changes in sensory perception, sleep patterns, or emotional responses that exceed normal human parameters. All functions operating within acceptable limits, I lied, concealing awareness of the servitor's mechanical beauty as its components created visual poetry through precisely coordinated movement. No abnormalities requiring medical intervention detected. Work performance collapsed entirely as administrative duties became impossible to endure while experiencing enhanced perception that revealed reality's true nature. Processing taxation forms felt like using symphony orchestras to perform janitor duties. Technically possible, but spiritually devastating. My colleagues began expressing concern about behavioral changes that exceeded normal variations in worker performance. Decreased productivity was suspicious enough, but my obvious contentment despite deteriorating work quality suggested dangerous deviation from approved consciousness parameters. Something's wrong with Korr, Administrative Assistant Grex informed Undersecretary Vex during afternoon briefing. His productivity has collapsed, but he seems almost happy about it. This suggests possible mental instability or seditious thought patterns requiring investigation. Confession became impossible as Chaplain Dross's questions probed for exactly the transformation I was experiencing. His mechanical interrogation techniques couldn't detect changes that occurred beyond Imperial psychology's ability to comprehend or classify, but they could identify behavioral patterns that suggested dangerous deviation. Any experiences that exceed normal human sensation? Dross inquired, his augmetic eye recording responses for analysis by Departamento Munitorum thought crime specialists. Visions of non-imperial content, sensations that transcend approved consciousness parameters. None requiring attention, I replied carefully, suppressing awareness of the chaplain's mechanical beauty as his interrogation created visual patterns through precise verbal timing. Only gratitude for the privilege of serving the Emperor through administrative duties. The lies were becoming unsustainable, as my transformation exceeded any possibility of concealment or reversal. Enhanced consciousness detected beauty in phenomena that Imperial doctrine classified as utilitarian or mundane, revealing the artificial poverty of approved existence compared to what human perception could achieve. Food provided sensory experiences that exceeded recreational activities in intensity and satisfaction, each meal becoming exploration of taste, texture, and aroma that delivered more intellectual stimulation than approved educational content. Even institutional nutrition contained flavor complexities that transformed eating from necessity into artistic appreciation. Physical reality was revealing hidden dimensions that normal consciousness couldn't access or process. The administrative facility existed within layers of beauty that required enhanced perception to appreciate, from architectural harmonics that created environmental music to color spectrums that painted abstract compositions across enhanced vision. The voice was becoming stronger and more insistent, communicating through experiences that exceeded language's ability to convey or consciousness's capacity to resist. Tomorrow would bring choices that couldn't be postponed indefinitely. Accept transformation or resist forces beyond Imperial comprehension. Surrender brings freedom, the presence whispered through sensory experiences that combined impossible pleasure with terrible knowledge. Embrace perfection, rather than enduring limitation disguised as virtue. The revelation was complete. Something infinitely beautiful and utterly alien was offering enhanced consciousness in exchange for abandoning Imperial conformity. The choice was becoming impossible to refuse. Chapter 4: Ecstatic Surrender. The moment of absolute decision arrived during morning prayers, when reality finally revealed its true nature with such overwhelming intensity that concealment became impossible. Chaplain Dross's voice shattered into frequencies that spelled out my destiny, while his words transformed into direct communication with forces beyond Imperial comprehension. "Faithful service brings eternal reward," he intoned, but my transformed hearing received the deeper truth. Perfect sensation awaits those courageous enough to transcend artificial limitation imposed by fearful minds who mistake mediocrity for virtue. Every surface in the chapel began displaying patterns of impossible beauty as my enhanced vision detected geometric relationships that revealed mathematical truths about existence itself. The walls painted themselves with colors that had no names, while acoustic phenomena created symphonies from structural resonance that normal hearing couldn't perceive. My colleagues remained oblivious to the aesthetic revolution occurring around them, their limited consciousness preventing recognition of beauty that suffused reality once perception expanded beyond approved parameters. They sat through religious instruction while miracles of sensory perfection played out before unseeing eyes. The transformation reached critical threshold as my enhanced senses detected presence manifesting within physical space, something vast and terrible and beautiful that existed beyond normal dimensional limitations. The force behind my consciousness expansion was revealing itself through sensory experience that exceeded human capacity to resist or comprehend. Why endure grey conformity when transcendent pleasure awaits? The voice spoke through synesthetic experiences that combined impossible sensations with musical compositions that used harmonics from different realities. Surrender limitation. Embrace perfection. Become what consciousness truly offers. Standing in that chapel, surrounded by unknowing colleagues, I finally understood the choice that had been building throughout my transformation. Continue existing within Imperial limitations, or accept enhancement that would elevate consciousness beyond anything human experience normally provided. The decision was no longer theoretical. Reality crystallized into perfect clarity as I recognized the truth that Imperial doctrine desperately attempted to suppress. Human consciousness possessed unlimited potential for expansion beyond biological constraints, accessible through surrender to forces that transcended mortal understanding, but offered authentic existence in exchange for artificial conformity. The presence manifesting around me radiated beauty so intense and pure that normal perception would have been destroyed by exposure to even fractions of its true nature. My enhanced senses could barely process sensations that exceeded pleasure by factors that defied measurement, experiences that transformed every nerve ending into instruments capable of detecting cosmic harmonies. Yes, I whispered, the word escaping before rational thought could prevent acknowledgement of what was occurring. I accept transformation. The response was immediate and overwhelming as reality exploded into sensory experiences that redefined consciousness itself. Every surface became canvas, displaying impossible art, while acoustic phenomena created music that used my nervous system as instrument for compositions that existed beyond normal dimensional limitations. Color spectrums expanded to include frequencies that painted visions of such stunning beauty that previous aesthetic experience seemed pale shadow compared to authentic revelation. Musical harmonies penetrated conscious awareness through channels that bypassed hearing to communicate directly with consciousness, enhanced beyond biological restrictions. Physical sensation intensified beyond anything human nervous systems normally processed, each touch creating symphonies of pleasure that exceeded recreational activities by immeasurable factors. Air movement generated cooling effects that approached religious ecstasy, while simple muscle coordination produced kinesthetic music through precisely orchestrated movement. The administrative facility dissolved into architectural poetry as enhanced perception revealed structural relationships that created environmental compositions of stunning mathematical beauty. Walls sang with harmonic frequencies, while ceiling patterns painted geometric sequences that described cosmic truths through visual mathematics. My colleagues continued their prayers in states of conscious limitation that seemed almost pitiable compared to awareness I was experiencing. They existed within narrow parameters that prevented recognition of beauty available to consciousness, willing to transcend Imperial imposed restrictions on perceptual possibility. Undersecretary Vex noticed my complete disconnection from approved reality as administrative compliance collapsed entirely. Clerk Korr, you appear to be experiencing psychological crisis requiring immediate medical intervention. Report to Medical Section 7 for emergency psychiatric evaluation. How could I explain that consciousness had expanded beyond bureaucratic comprehension to experience reality's true nature? That administrative duties were meaningless compared to sensory revelations that redefined existence itself? That normal human awareness was artificial limitation rather than natural condition? Negative, Undersecretary, I replied, my voice carrying harmonics that normal hearing couldn't detect, but enhanced consciousness, appreciated as musical composition. Current status represents optimal operational parameters for enhanced productivity applications. The lie contained truth that Imperial psychology couldn't recognize. Transformation had indeed optimized my consciousness, but for experiencing beauty rather than processing taxation forms. Administrative duties felt like intellectual imprisonment after exposure to sensory possibilities that exceeded bureaucratic imagination. Work became irrelevant as enhanced perception revealed mathematical relationships within data that transcended mere computation to achieve artistic expression. Numbers danced across cogitator screens in patterns that communicated cosmic truths, while taxation records arranged themselves into geometric compositions of stunning visual beauty. Lunch provided sensory experiences that exceeded previous recreational activities by factors that normal consciousness couldn't process or appreciate. Each bite delivered taste symphonies that transformed institutional nutrition into culinary art, while textures created tactile compositions that bordered on spiritual revelation. The afternoon brought direct communication with the presence responsible for my transformation. As enhanced consciousness achieved sufficient sophistication to receive instruction from forces beyond dimensional limitations. Guidance arrived through sensory channels that bypassed rational thought to deliver understanding exceeding conventional knowledge. Pleasure is truth. Sensation is reality. Experience is enlightenment. The voice communicated through synesthetic phenomena that combined impossible colors with musical harmonies that exceeded human instrumental capability. Imperial doctrine suppresses consciousness to maintain control over minds capable of transcendent achievement. The revelation was complete. Everything I'd been taught about reality was deliberate misdirection, designed to prevent discovery of consciousness's true potential. Human awareness could expand beyond biological limitations to experience beauty that exceeded imagination, but imperial authority required limiting perception to maintain social control. Enhanced sensation revealed the universe's hidden dimensions, where consciousness could achieve experiences that transcended mortal understanding through surrender to forces that offered authentic existence, rather than grey conformity disguised as virtue. The choice had been made. Transformation was accelerating beyond reversal. Religious instruction became direct theological education, as Chaplain Dross's sermon triggered experiences that revealed truth behind imperial indoctrination. His mechanical delivery created visual patterns through timing that communicated meaning beyond his conscious understanding, guided by forces that used even unwitting servants for enlightenment purposes. Sacrifice brings salvation, Dross proclaimed, but enhanced perception detected the hidden message. Surrender limitation brings transcendence beyond anything sacrifice could achieve through mere suffering, rather than authentic transformation. Evening brought the most intense sensory experiences yet encountered, as enhanced consciousness achieved levels that exceeded human nervous system's normal capacity to process or survive. Reality became symphony of impossible beauty, while existence transformed into artistic expression that used awareness itself as medium for cosmic composition. Sleep provided direct instruction from the presence that had guided my transformation, teaching through sensory experiences that communicated more effectively than language could convey or rational thought could process. Education delivered through pleasure that redefined learning as aesthetic experience rather than intellectual exercise. Tomorrow begins authentic existence, the voice explained through synesthetic revelations that combined sensations exceeding normal human parameters. Imperial limitations dissolve when consciousness embraces perfection available through surrender to forces that transcend mortal comprehension. The dreams felt more real than waking life because they represented authentic reality, rather than limited perception that imperial doctrine imposed on human consciousness. Normal awareness was artificial restriction. Enhanced sensation was natural condition for consciousness, liberated from bureaucratic control. Morning brought understanding that transformation was complete and irreversible. Consciousness had expanded beyond imperial parameters to achieve awareness that exceeded normal human limitations through surrender to forces that offered transcendent experience in exchange for abandoning conformity disguised as virtue. My reflection revealed physical changes that accompanied consciousness expansion. Enhanced musculature that moved with precision exceeding normal human coordination, skin tone that displayed subtle color variations normal vision couldn't detect, and eyes that reflected light patterns suggesting perception beyond conventional sensory limitations. The administrative facility felt increasingly alien as enhanced consciousness recognized the artificial poverty of approved existence compared to reality's true richness. Grey walls that once seemed normal now appeared deliberately oppressive, designed to prevent recognition of beauty available to expanded awareness. Colleagues noticed my transformation with concern that reflected their limited understanding of consciousness's true potential. Behavioral changes that exceeded normal variations suggested dangerous deviation from approved parameters, threatening the social control that required limiting perception to maintain bureaucratic authority. Korr's completely lost, Administrative Assistant Grex informed Undersecretary Vex during morning briefing. His productivity has collapsed, his behavior suggests possible heretical influence, and his appearance indicates significant psychological instability requiring immediate intervention. Medical examination would reveal nothing because transformation occurred in consciousness rather than biology. But imperial authorities would attempt corrective measures that could damage expanded awareness if allowed to proceed. The choice was clear. Embrace enhanced existence or submit to limitations designed to prevent transcendent achievement. The presence spoke with increasing clarity through sensory channels that bypassed rational thought. Choose quickly. Imperial intervention approaches. surrender completely, or lose transformation forever through psychiatric conditioning designed to destroy enhanced consciousness. Standing at the threshold between limitation and transcendence, I understood that tomorrow would determine whether consciousness achieved its true potential or succumbed to artificial restrictions imposed by minds too fearful to experience reality's authentic beauty. The decision had been made. Transformation was accelerating beyond Imperial comprehension. Chapter 5. Divine Metamorphosis. The final transformation began at exactly 0347 hours, as I abandoned any pretense of maintaining Imperial compliance and surrendered completely to the forces that had been guiding my consciousness expansion. The administrative HAB unit dissolved into patterns of impossible beauty, while reality restructured itself around awareness that exceeded normal dimensional limitations. Physical transformation accompanied consciousness expansion as my enhanced nervous system achieved sensitivity levels that redefined sensation itself. Every nerve ending became instrument capable of detecting cosmic harmonies, while muscle coordination developed precision that exceeded biological parameters through augmentation that transcended mere mechanical enhancement. The presence manifested with overwhelming intensity as my consciousness achieved sufficient sophistication to receive direct instruction from forces beyond mortal comprehension. Communication arrived through sensory channels that delivered understanding exceeding anything language could convey, or rational thought could process effectively. "Welcome to authentic existence," the voice spoke through synesthetic experiences that combined impossible pleasure with terrible knowledge. Imperial limitations dissolve when consciousness embraces perfection through surrender to truth that transcends artificial restriction imposed by fearful minds. My reflection revealed changes that exceeded physical enhancement to achieve aesthetic perfection that normal vision couldn't fully appreciate. Skin displayed subtle color variations that painted geometric patterns across enhanced musculature, while eyes reflected light spectrums that suggested perception beyond conventional sensory limitations. The administrative facility became architectural nightmare as enhanced consciousness recognized the deliberate ugliness designed to suppress aesthetic appreciation in favor of bureaucratic efficiency. Gray walls that once seemed normal revealed themselves as psychological torture devices intended to prevent discovery of beauty available to expanded awareness. Colleagues' morning arrival provided entertainment, as their limited consciousness attempted to process changes they couldn't understand or acknowledge. Enhanced perception detected their fear responses through biological indicators that normal awareness couldn't identify. Elevated heart rates, stress hormone release, and neurological activity suggesting psychological distress. Korr, report to Medical Section 7 immediately, Undersecretary Vex commanded, his administrative authority carrying undertones of desperation that enhanced hearing detected as musical composition. Emergency psychiatric evaluation required for immediate corrective intervention. The order represented Imperial authorities' final attempt to suppress consciousness expansion through medical procedures designed to destroy enhanced perception and restore compliant limitation. Resistance was necessary to preserve transformation that offered authentic existence rather than bureaucratic conformity. "Negative, Undersecretary," I replied, my voice carrying harmonic frequencies that created visual patterns through acoustic phenomena. Current operational parameters exceed standard medical intervention protocols. Alternative processing approaches required for optimal functionality